Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to start our second method of solving quadratic equations. With this method, it's important to use it when we're in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. The big takeaway here is when you have your middle term, the x term, that's the best time to do this. So if we take a moment and think of graphing quadratics, say for pretend I had this beautiful quadratic graph here. And when I graphed it, it looked like this. And it crossed at the -1 and the 1. We would say the solutions were at -1 and 1. It's where it hits the x-axis. And any point on the x-axis has y equal to 0. So for example, -1 would be -1 comma 0, and 1 would be 1 comma 0. In both of those solutions, the y value is 0. So the big thing to remember here is we have to set our equations equal to 0, our factors equal to 0. So what I have to start with are two factored equations. So number one is saying x plus 3 times x minus 5 is equal to 0. What we need to do is figure out what values we can put in for x in order to make the equation equal to 0. The way we do that is take each factor, so by factor I mean x plus 3 and x minus 5, and set them both equal to 0. And we solve. So how do I get x by itself on the top? Well, I would subtract 3 to both sides, and you find that x is equal to -3. On the bottom, if I set the equation equal to 0, I would add 5 to both sides, good, and you would find that x is equal to 5. So we have our two solutions. In the second equation, I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. So x equal to 0, oh, that was easy. That's one solution. And then x plus 4 equal to 0. How would I solve that? You guessed it, -4 to both sides. So x is equal to a -4. Great job. So let's look at number 3. If we go through and solve this one, I have x plus 4 equal to 0, and I have x minus 2 equal to 0. All right, well, my first equation, good, I'm going to -4, so I get x is equal to -4. On the right side, what do? Yep, add 2 to both sides, so I get x is equal to 2. Now, to prove to you that this works, if I were to go through and substitute in, say, the -4 in for x, it would look like this: -4 plus 4 times -4 minus 2. And we're questioning, will that equal 0? So notice, both places where I had x, I put the -4 in its place. Well, -4 plus 4, that first parenthesis becomes 0. Times -4 minus 2 gives me -6, and that definitely does equal 0. So that's why we can do this, because if you make one factor equal to 0, then the entire equation is equal to 0. Let's look at number 4. Again, we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So we have x being equal to 0, and we have 2x plus 5 equal to 0. Well, in this situation, we would -5 to both sides. So I get 2x is equal to a -5, but x is not by itself yet. Now I need to go through and divide both by 2. When I do that, I find out that the other solution is x is equal to a -2.5. Finally, my last equation, number 5. If I set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Remember how we had exact and approximate? It's going to apply here as well. So I'm going to start by minusing 1 to both sides. So I get 4x is equal to a -1. Divide them both by 4. So I have x is equal to a -1 over 4. That is an exact answer. Over here, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Good. So I get 2x is equal to, great job. Now divide both sides by 2. That is my second answer. Now that I have my two fractional answers, I have to go back and do all that figuring. -1 divided by 4 is a -0.25. 3 divided by 2 is a 1.5. So I have my exact answers, and I have my approximate answers. Now that we understand what we need. We need everything in factored form. Let's go ahead and put it all together. So in order to solve equations by factoring, the first thing we need to make sure is the equation sign is equal to 0. That means that all terms should be on the same side. Then we can go through and factor it. Once we get it in factored form, so that means 2 sets of parentheses, you set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. Then of course you need to do your exact and approximate solutions. So let's look at our first one. We go ahead and do our x. Do you remember how to do this? Yep, we're going to draw our little earmuffs or headphones, and you multiply first times last. What is x squared times 6? Awesome, 6x squared. What number's in the middle? Negative 5x, great. So what numbers multiply to be 6 but add up to be negative 5? Keep trying. No, it's not 6 and negative 1 because I have to get a positive on top. Good, it's negative 2x and negative 3x. So then I rewrite it. My earmuffs just get carried down. What I'm going to change is that middle term. Instead of saying negative 5, I say minus 2x minus 3x. And then what's that special thing? Yeah, we're going to divide and conquer by grouping, the underlined squiggle. What does x squared and negative 2x have in common? An x, good. So when we factor that out, we get x times what's left over? Well, x squared divided by x is x. Negative 2x divided by x is negative 2. Now we're going to do the same thing in the second half. Do you see that minus sign? We got to put it down there. And then what do 3 and 6 have in common? You guessed it, negative 3. That's what goes in the middle. And then we divide. Negative 3x over negative 3 is just x. 6 divided by negative 3 is, good job, negative 2. So my two parentheses are x minus 2 and x minus 3. And remember, we're setting these equal to 0. Now that I have it in factored form, I set each factor equal to 0. So I have x minus 2 equals 0. So how do I solve that? Right, I add 2 to both sides. So x is equal to 2. That's my first exact answer. And then I do x minus 3 is equal to 0. Good, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Good. So my second one is x is equal to, good job, 3. Because those are whole numbers, there is no approximate solution. Awesome. So let's go ahead and look at our second equation. We have 2x squared minus 13x minus 7. So again, we're going to start by doing our x, and you multiply your first times your last. So there's my headphones. 2x squared times a negative 7. Good. Negative 14x squared. And who's in the middle? You guessed it, negative 13x. So what numbers multiply to be negative 14 but add up to be negative 13? Man, you're on fire. Good. Negative 14x and a 1x. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. Remember those ones from up top. I have 2x squared. And then I have my minus 14x plus 1x. And then I have that minus 7 in the end. Now that I went ahead and took care of that, I can divide my problem in half and group it up with the underlined squiggle. So what do 2x squared and 14x have in common? Right, they have a 2x. Over here, they have a positive what in common? Good, a positive 1. Great. So when I factor out that 2x, what am I left with? Well, 2x squared divided by 2x is just x. Negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7, and there's no x's left. Now I'm going to bring down my plus 1. And when I divide everything by 1, nothing really changes. It's still x minus 7 in parentheses. So my two parentheses are 2x plus 1 and x minus 7 equals 0. So now that I have it all factored, I can set each individual factor equal to 0. So how do I solve this guy? Right, minus 1 to both sides. So I get 2x equals negative 1. Divide them both by 2. Good. So I have a fraction, x equals negative 1/2. Now I go through and do it again. X minus 7 equals 0. How do I solve that? Right, I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So I get x is equal to 7. So I have my two numbers. Because one of them is a fraction, we then would go back and change that fraction to a decimal and then carry down my 7. And those are my exact and approximate solutions. Great job today. I realize that this is a lot of information for day one. So we're just going to continue to practice right now the back side of your notes, solving by factoring. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to your teacher. Otherwise, I feel like you should be able to do a great job on this assignment. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye.